Hello viewers and welcome to another great episode of She Power right here on WTV Kenya. I'm your host Linda Kruger. Now today we are in Mukuru kwa Ruben and I'll be interviewing Wangu Kanja, where we'll be finding out more about her foundation and getting to learn more about the impact she has had within this community.
My name is Wangu Kanja and I'm a survivor of sexual violence. I was working for a company where I needed to go and look for clients. So I met up with one of my friends so that we can discuss about a prospect that he had to supply cars to a big organization. And during that process, we were carjacked and at some point they let the men go because we were 3 of us, and I was left with the carjackers who took me to a secluded place. And one of the young men in the semi-fence place where I was held asked me to undress, and I refused a couple of times.
And to start us off, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the Wangu Kanja Foundation.
So the foundation, what it does is address issues of sexual violence, basically in the country, but we've picked Mukuru as a base, because that's where we have the offices, but also got an opportunity to be hosted by the Christian brothers, and it would serve the community, and we would see change that we would actually translate, or whatever transformation that the community has gone through, so that we can expand our programs to other areas. But that does not mean that we do not work at the county level and the national level. So we work on all levels, and having to address sexual violence, it's one of those very sensitive topics, and also other forms of gender-based violence, because they contribute towards people being sexually violated. And the way we go about it, our process is we create awareness with men, women, children in schools, religious institutions, politicians, so that everyone gets to know what is sexual violence, what is gender-based violence, what are the consequences, and what laws exist to ensure that perpetrators are held accountable, but also the laws that protect the citizens or the community from any form of abuse. And then from there we have programs another program where we help survivors access comprehensive care and support. That's medical, psychological, and legal, so that the person has holistic support services. The medical is where they go and access PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis, so that they are able to prevent them contracting HIV and AIDS, or sexually transmitted infection, or conceiving after a rape or deal. Then we have psychological support, where we offer one-on-one counseling, but we are also looking at alternative ways, because not one-on-one counseling does not work for everyone. So we have an alternative of dance therapy, art therapy, to see whether that helps, because some of our beneficiaries are actually, when they go through such a traumatic experience, they are unable to talk, they are mute. So we need to take them through a process so that they can come out of that situation, and they are able to even follow up in court, because it becomes difficult for them to give their testimony in court. And then we have legal redress, where once you've gotten your medical report, then we help you to go and report at the police station. From there, then the police will do the investigation and the perpetrator is going to be taken to court. And we help the people to get to know and understand how the court system operates. Because there are so many things that people ask and they don't have information. For example, if a perpetrator is apprehended, even he has a right to be taken through the justice system with dignity and respect, regardless of the crime that he committed. So we get perpetrators being given bails or bonds, and when they come back into the community, they're actually a threat to the survivor. And we address such issues by going back to court and addressing it with the court so that they take up the issue and give a warning to the perpetrators or their families, because it depends. You might find it's their family or friends who are actually intimidating the survivor and their family. We also know that the perpetrators are meant to be taken to court within the first 24 hours. So all that information, we help the beneficiary to understand and also assess the threat around that particular individual and the family. And then we have Restorative Justice, where we work with survivors who cannot get justice because, one, they took like forever to report, 20 years, 30 years. They've never shared their story with anyone. So we give them that environment to share their stories, so that without being judged, without fear, because the first time you tell your story, you start your healing process, because it's something that it's now in the open and people know, but also it's in a controlled environment, and the people that are with you in the room are not judging you. They're just listening to you, and they want to work with you through the healing process. So we give them that platform, but also work with perpetrators, not stigmatizing them by pointing them out, by saying, you're a perpetrator, and we just identify through the community health workers, the paralegals in the community who are perpetrators, and if we have forums, if they can come to those forums. And in that platform, we actually help them understand what is sexual violence, what it does, what are the consequences, but on an individual, body, mind, and spirit, because it affects the person holistically. And then we have advocacy, where we pick issues or gaps, either in the community, the Ruben community, the county, the national, even the global platform, and address that issue. If it's funding for such projects, if it's laws, because you see, we have, as a country, we have very good laws, but when it comes to implementation, then we have a huge gap that need to be addressed. And then we have financial freedom, where women are trained on business skills and business knowledge, given business knowledge. How do you start a business? Customer care service, bookkeeping, loan savings, so that we eliminate them being vulnerable. Because one of the things that actually make them more vulnerable is them not being financially independent. So we try to be holistic, so that when the person comes in and when they exit, they have a holistic support system with them.
Wow, amazing. I mean, those are very many programs, and I think that approach has had a very good impact. And maybe you can share with us, what was the inspiration behind starting a foundation, going out on your own and coming up with it and addressing these sensitive issues, especially with the situation against with women in the country, with regards to gender-based violence?
So I started Wangu Kanja Foundation because of my own personal experience. So I went through a rape ordeal in 2002, and for a very long time, let's say like 3 years, I went into depression because sexual violence takes away your dignity as an individual. And that's why we are working towards restoring dignity to survivors of sexual and gender-based violence and their families. It destroys you as an individual, body, mind, and spirit. Because this is a crime that was committed without your consent. And most people don't understand. If you're raped, you did not give consent to have any sexual relationship with that specific individual.
Yeah.
So that person took away your dignity without your consent. And because there's this thing, people keep on saying it's just sex. It's not sex. Sexual relationships between a man and a woman, they have a consent. They communicate and they have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why they have a sexual relationship. When it comes to rape, it's not a relationship. It's taking advantage of somebody who's vulnerable, maybe a girl who's going to school and maybe she doesn't have all that she needs, supplies for her school, and then coercing her and telling her, you know what, if you do this, then I'll do this.
Yeah.
There is no consent. All you're doing is taking advantage of the situation to benefit you as an individual, and it's wrong because you're destroying that individual. And because that happened to me, I went through a series of like stages in depression. I used alcohol for 2.5 years as a coping mechanism because I used it to numb the pain.
Oh, yeah.
Because every single day I was reminded of, and that pain needed to go away. So I used alcohol, and most people do. Not only alcohol, but they use other drugs, and also they use sex also as a coping mechanism because they have not come into terms with what happened to them. And it's a very complex or difficult situation to be in because one, looking at the Kenyan context, we don't talk about sex, sexuality, and sexual violence.
Yeah,
and
like
because
taboo.
yeah, so because we are not talking about it, then we don't create an environment for people to come out and say, this happened to me and I need support, or reach out to somebody who will not judge you, who will not look down on you, or who will not condemn you. So how does that affect an individual, keeping in mind that family is supposed to be supporting you, friends are supposed to be supporting you, but they're the ones who are judging you and condemning you. We tend to shift from blaming the perpetrator to blaming the survivor. She's not the one who actually committed the crime. The perpetrator is the one who committed the crime, and the perpetrator should be held accountable. And that's what we lack, because we always, as a society, has always justified, rationalized, condoned violence. And the fact that women are seen as property, then it actually aggravates or fuels the process of them being vulnerable and subject to abuse. And when it comes to sexual and gender-based violence, it's not a women issue. We have men, boys who are being violated. So it's no longer a women-girls issue. Mm-hmm. It's a social issue that needs to be addressed as a social issue. Because the more we focus on it as a women's and girls issue, then we don't have a level playground or a field where we address it the way we need to address it.
Yes.
So that's where I came from, and in the story behind Wangu Kanja Foundation being established. And for me, it's a story that I wouldn't want to hear any man, woman or child going through, because it destroys you. And if you don't have a proper support system, then you're bound to get into a lot of problems. You'll either use a lot of alcohol or drugs and something happens to you. Maybe get yourself into an accident. Because of alcohol, you might be promiscuous, then you're opening yourself up to more risky behaviors. So it's an issue that needs to be handled with care. And my frustration over the period of from 2005 to now is, it's like issues of sexual and gender-based violence are actually falling on deaf ears.
That's very true. Where do you think we have that happening currently in the country? You know, it's not big news. It's not an offense to hear that, you know, a young girl was going to school in the morning and let's say a security guard accosted them and, you know, sexually assaulted them or even mass raped them. Why do we have this culture of condoning such acts?
I guess culture and tradition. If you look at some of the cultures that we have, they actually condoned violence over a period of time. Because I don't know, you can relate with some of the marriage rituals that were done in the past, where a woman was going to the river and then men would actually, the man would identify, that's the woman I want, and then his friends would come carry the lady to the man's house, and then later that's when the man will actually tell his family, you need to go to so and so's place and say nimevunja mbuzi ya mwenyewe mguu, so they need to start the whole process of dowry and stuff. So looking at that scenario, if the woman was going to the river to fetch water and then the men came and took her, there's no relationship, there's no consent, and that by itself is violating that person's rights, because they need to choose and they have to choose. Also, I think in Maasai, one of the Maasai communities, where two suitors will beat the hell out of each other for a lady, so the person who becomes the victor actually takes the bride. So for me, those are some of the culture or traditions that actually fuel, because you see, a woman is not a property. She's supposed to be your partner. And if you love and care for someone, then you don't need to violate that person. You need to give them room to express themselves and communicate with you. And that's how I look at sexual violence. Non-violent communication actually helps, because you get to talk and agree, disagree, but going to the extent of where you have to harm someone or take life, then to me it's one of those things where we as a country, we are sitting on a ticking time bomb, because we are not taking issues of sexual and gender-based violence seriously. I keep on telling people, we have not addressed the past injustices. We have not addressed the current injustices, and we are yet, and God forbid, to have future injustices. How do we address that? And we are a country where counseling, being one of the support services, is also, people stigmatize people when you access counseling services. So how do we create that environment where people, women, men, can actually handle issues with dignity and respect amongst themselves? Because that translates also to the children. If you don't do that, then your children are also affected, and your children become violators when they grow up. So how do we bring that conversation for everyone to have that conversation, whether it's in church, whether it's in school, whether it's in our workplaces, and have it on a sober mind, not saying men need to do, women need to do. No, we all need to do something.
Yeah. Has to be a concerted effort.
Yeah.
I'd like for you to share with us that one experience or one story that gave you hope, that I'm doing the right thing, that eventually there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to say it's not easy, and I will not lie to anyone by saying working on addressing sexual and gender-based violence is an easy conversation to have. It's not. And every single day I wake up and I ask God, is it the right thing that I chose to do? Because you might wake up and you're told a child has been defiled and maybe they died in the process of being taken to hospital, or a girl or a boy was sexually violated and they lost their life along the way. A woman was battered and they lost their life. So it's not an easy conversation to have, but we must face it head on. But there are success stories where we've worked with survivors. A person who was raped, conceived, contracted HIV, the family was against them, and they actually are doing well currently. Because all you need to do is stand with a person. You might not say anything, but they know that you're supporting them and that you're on their side. Whatever they need or whatever kind of support they would require from you, you're willing to offer them. Some time back, a lady who was raped by the boyfriend because she didn't believe in having sex before marriage. And when they were hanging out at the man's place, the man dragged her drink and then raped her because she was unconscious. When she got herself in the morning, she asked the man, "What did you do? Because I can't remember what happened."
Yeah.
So he was like, "I've been asking you for us to have sex and you keep on refusing." So I resorted to drugging you and name calling and talking to her badly, and she wasn't quite sure what she's going to tell her mother, because her mother is a single parent and has supported her all through her life. When I got her call, she was, "I want to commit suicide," and I'm like, the best thing I can, because it's at night, is convince her to wait until morning so that we can meet and have a conversation and understand where she's coming from. And that's what I did. And the next day in the morning, I went, we met, we had a conversation, we went to Kenyatta. She received all medical services, and she started her counseling session. And because of the counseling sessions, she was able to actually even bring the mom to the counseling sessions for them to have that conversation. Because even it's hard for the parent thinking her child cannot come to her when she's gone through such a traumatic experience. And because she didn't go to hospital immediately, she actually conceived. And the mother was able to even support her through the pregnancy. And she's raising the child with love, and that's all we can ask. So there are many success stories, but my appeal to every single Kenyan is, do not become a bystander. When you're seeing someone being violated, do something. Either intervene ask people to pull away the two parties and take them to different corners and have conversations with them. But don't be a bystander, don't be a perpetrator, because that particular person that you're actually violating, you are destroying their life, but all the other people in that family, because they're affected. If one person is affected, everyone is affected. And for men, they need to step up.
Yeah.
Because they need to stand and say, you know what, we need to support the women in our lives, because who knows, that particular individual might be your sister, might be your mother, might be your daughter, and the same for women. That man who's being violated might be your brother, might be your father. So we need to actually have a united front and say enough is enough to end sexual and gender-based violence.
Oh yeah, that is very true, Wangu. And I mean, we celebrate you and the work that you continue to do for